Dear ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to start yet one online webinar within the project of the new global partnerships of the Ukrainian Prism. For those who are for the first time with us, Ukrainian Prism is the biggest foreign policy think tank in Ukraine that is trying to cover all the world. And for the last 3 years, we have been very active, always trying to identify who can be the new partners for Ukraine or the old new partners, because some countries that we analyze, they're returning back to the cohort of the potential strategic partners of Ukraine. My name is Dr. Hanna Sheles. I'm Director for Security Studies and Global Outreach, and I will be the moderator of this online event. Today, we are speaking about Ukraine and South Africa. Sudden people would probably doubt, do we have any type of the strategic partnerships? So definitely today we will speak about what is needed for the relations between two countries to find new endeavors or the new ways to increase and enhance the cooperation between the countries. However, we definitely single out South Africa from other African countries and Ukrainian policy over there. So with this not that easy topic, I'm glad to present our three distinguished speakers. First of all, I would like to present Ambassador Alexander Sherba, who is since 2025 the ambassador of Ukraine to South Africa. And that would be the view from the ground, on the ground, how it is seen there, what is the potential for the bilateral relations. Then I will be glad to introduce Mrs. Oksana Rozumna, who is the affiliated expert for the Ukrainian Prism and prepared the report about the Ukraine-South African relations that you already can find at our website and also at the in our social networks. She spent quite a number of years in South Africa as a diplomat as well. So we will see the reflections of those years there. And the last but not the least, we will be glad to hear from Ambassador Lyubov Abravitova, who is currently in charge of the newly established Department of Africa and African Organizations at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but previously spent many, many years as the ambassador of Ukraine to South Africa. So we will have a wonderful opportunity also to see her reflections after returning back, how South Africa is seen already from Kiev, not from the south of Africa, but also to put South Africa within the Ukrainian African policy, where it is. And in general, what is changing with the Ukrainian African policy is we have the newly established department. That's something we couldn't imagine probably even 5 years ago, not speaking about longer perspective. So that's where we are, and without further delays, the floor is yours, Ambassador Sherba, where we are now and how it is seen from Pretoria.
Thank you, Hanna. First of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we hear you well, and I will ask others who are not speaking to switch off the microphone so we would not have extra sounds in case of any malfunctioning.
So thank you, Hanna. Thank you for conducting this event. I look forward to reading the report. It's an interesting moment in my tenure as ambassador in South Africa. Yesterday was 6 months since I arrived in this country, so time flies quickly. Although the sense of time here is quite different from what we have in Ukraine. Everyone speaks here about African time. As a rule, it means that people are not in a hurry. And that was my first adjustment as ambassador, because I represent a country with a sense of shortage of time in a country where very often there is no such sense. Yet For instance, only next week, after 6 months of being in South Africa, I will formally present my credentials as ambassador. This doesn't mean that I haven't been fully accredited in these 6 months. They have a different system than in Ukraine. I have been, and this doesn't mean disrespect. It simply means that everything happens here according to African time, not as quickly as in Ukraine. My second problem, and I will be blunt here, is South Africa's very distinct, very complicated relationship towards the West. And because it's seen in this war as someone fighting for its right to be with the West, it has an impact of how Ukraine and the ongoing war is seen as and assessed in this country. The growing gap between South Africa and the United States doesn't help either. I will be frank about this too. So in short, it's a bad timing on top of a bad timing on top of a bad timing. Yet bad timing doesn't mean that things are bad between our countries. There are some encouraging moments. In December, South Africa for the first time voted yes on a major Ukraine resolution in the United Nations, the resolution on return of Ukraine's abducted children from Russia. Secondly, the potential of African Peace Initiative is not quite utilized yet. There is some potential there. Thirdly, there is some cautious optimism about finally building the 3 pillars of our cooperation: the joint government group on cooperation, the parliamentary friendship group, and the joint business council. If we build at least one of these 3 pillars, it would be a major achievement for our bilateral relations. Yet at this point, I would put emphasis on the word cautious, because the overall timing, the geopolitical context is not good. There is a sense in South Africa that the world is on the brink of a new division, and South Africa doesn't want to be only on one side of this new global division. This doesn't make my work here easier, although it just means that we don't have to put South Africa before, stark geopolitical choices. We have to avoid that. What also creates problems is the habit of many people in Ukraine to see Africa as something distant and irrelevant to us. And given this attitude, how can we blame many Africans for not seeing Ukraine as something relevant for them? I also keep reminding my South African friends not to talk South Africa small. Pretoria is the world's second biggest diplomatic capital after Washington, D.C., if you count the number of embassies. South Africa is the voice, or at least one of the leading voices of Global South. And if today this voice of Global South comes to Putin and says, we are not enemies to you, but this war leads nowhere, it needs to stop, it would mean everything. It would be yet another moment for South Africa to write history and to be the moral authority in the eyes of the world. Or if South Africa indeed succeeds in bringing Ukrainian kids back to Ukraine, or if South Africa becomes a leader on the problem of nuclear security in view of Russia's aggression right now, because who else if not South Africa, who, just like we did, renounced its nuclear arsenal in the 1990s. So this would be the prospective avenues for our cooperation in the years to come, and I hope I will hear about them in your report either. So once again, thank you for giving your time and giving your attention to South Africa. South Africa absolutely deserves it, and the potential here is huge. Let's think how we utilize it as we should. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. We will return back with a few questions after the first round of introduction. And now I would like to give the word to Oksana Razumna, who made probably the first comprehensive research about the history and current stance of the bilateral relations between our two countries. So, Oksana, from where we are coming and where we are now in terms of the bilateral relations, what is the perspective for them? When we see all those 30 plus years of the bilateral relations.
Good morning, good day, everyone. Do you hear me well? Okay, first of all, I appreciate the invitation of the Ukrainian Prism to take part in the expertise. Yeah, it is my first attempt to collaborate with Ukrainian Prism, and I appreciate this. And I'm honored to take part in today's discussion, and I will give a small talk about what was written. This research was conceived and was written as a policy-oriented analytical contribution aimed at supporting Ukrainian government and Ukraine's engagement with South Africa, and its primary objective is to conceptualize the transition from functional interaction between the two countries toward more structured and strategic ties, which obviously to be reconsidered and questioned up to the current agenda. I finalized this report in October, in November, before the current G20 development. So back then the situation was absolutely different, and obviously we aim today to see the outcomes of this paper into a new context, geopolitical context and context of bilateral relations between Ukraine and South Africa. Consequently, methodologically, this analysis relies on a policy framework approach, and it draws on official strategies, diplomatic practices, instrumental positioning to map the current state back then to the end of 2025. At that period, the current stage of Ukraine-South Africa relations can be represented through three main points, such as peace and mediation, humanitarian and legal cooperation, and science, education, cultural exchange. And what stays relevant up to today is the ultimate test Pretoria is passing, whether South Africa can translate its historic narrative of justice into a consistent position on contemporary confrontations between democracies and autocracies. For Ukraine, for Ukraine's victory, for Ukraine's reconstruction, we require sustained engagement beyond the Euro-Atlantic orbit, and it was a pillar point of this paper. And we know how important is the votes and the voices of African countries, and South Africa plays the role of gateway to the continent and to the global South in general. Symbolically and politically, South Africa plays the role of significant counterpart for Kyiv within the European, playing the leading role within the European Union and BRICS that shapes international legitimacy and reconstruction perspectives. And one of the points I would emphasize, which are relevant until now, is that both countries, Ukraine and South Africa, share a parallel founding moment. Ukraine's independence obtained in 1991 and South Africa's democratic transition of 1994. Both emerges from authoritarian systems and faced the task of national building simultaneously. And of course, the outcomes of this paper and all the recommendations given in it should be reconsidered in the light of recent development, such as South Africa, the US deterioration of relationship, which happened during G20, and the positioning of South Africa on the global stage within the conflict on the Middle East, so-called neutrality of South Africa has dramatically changed into the positioning of deepening engagement with non-Western partners, expanded political and military cooperation with actors such as Russia, China, and Iran. Increased focus on regional leadership of South Africa, which is strengthening its regional leadership role, comparing to the global stage leadership. So I'm expecting a lot of reconsideration of the outcomes, and I would be happy to hear from my colleagues for any feedback and how this report can be helpful in terms of maybe soft power framework, in terms of historical institutionalization framework. I think a lot of points I draw on are still relevant to the current agenda.
Thank you, Oksana. We definitely see that it's always a challenge. You don't want to prepare a big academic works. You would like to be more policy oriented, but the policies in our times are changing so quickly sometimes and so unexpectedly that we should be ready to reflect, even after 2-3 months, what we definitely saw as the trends, or what is just the temporarily or let's say ad hoc changes in the policies or in the relations between the countries. And we're just in the very few months of the new challenges. So I would say that it's too early to speak, will we really transform the bilateral relations to something new, or unfortunately, we may also have the return back. The history also saw it in many countries, in many bilateral relations. That's why I would like to refer now to Ambassador Abravitova with the question is, Ukraine is definitely changing its policy, singling out Africa from the bigger region and emphasizing the importance of the African region for Ukraine. We see it consistently for the last several years. And here would be the question. So why it is? Is it really a trend that we understand that now is sustainable? And where is in all this trend South Africa? Is it still something that would be, I cannot say separate, it cannot be separate as one of the regional leaders, but as policy more oriented for the South Africa and the relations with the continent, or it's still one coherent, complex, comprehensive strategy that Ukraine is building? Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Good day, dear colleagues, Your Excellencies, dear Hannah. First of all, let me express my appreciation and gratitude for such a consistent development of African studies and knowledge about Ukraine and African cooperation in the recent years. We really do need this expertise and attention, and I'm so happy to see here a lot of familiar faces that are already not new for the discussion of Ukraine and African cooperation. Indeed, the South Africa has a very special place in Ukraine's foreign policy, but I would like to start from the end, where Ukraine sees today their cooperation with Africa, and what are the main pillars, let's say, of this. Probably most of you recently seen that we are talking about the renewed strategy of Ukraine in Africa, and we're talking on it on different platforms, including the working group of the government of Ukraine in the Office of President. A couple of days ago, we had a meeting of intergovernmental platform together with our ambassadors, not only in African countries, but also in some of the key partners in the world. I'm not talking only about the Western countries. And the timing of that meeting was very crucial because we see the changes in geopolitical architecture due to the recent developments in Persian Gulf. I'm talking about the crisis in Iran, and it's very much affecting the sub-Saharan Africa particularly, and our key country to discuss today, the South Africa, due to the very strong political and economic ties. That means that not only Ms. Oksana Rozumna report, but actually all the strategizing has to be very promptly adjusting and reconsidered due to this immediate changes. So we first of all have to put the frame on which Africa we are talking about. And in our strategy, we're already very clearly dividing the North Africa from Sub-Saharan Africa due to the historical, cultural, and the economical conditions of the relations for today. So I will be talking predominantly about the Sub-Saharan Africa now, and the biggest strategy where we see our relations in 5 to 10 year time. We are definitely going away from positioning ourselves as the donor in Africa. We are looking at the equal partnerships, partnerships that are win-win. We're trying to formulate the political and economic subjectivity of Ukraine in Sub-Saharan Africa and in every macro region of Sub-Saharan Africa. We need to look at the opportunities for win-win cooperation through the chain of economic routes for the reconstruction and development of Ukraine, first of all, because this is the main frame for our Ukrainian foreign policy when we're trying to build up those platforms to not only to support the relations, but also to have this collaboration on different layers of it when Ukraine can sustainably grow and share its experience for the growth and development of those countries that are developing. And let me put here a small disclaimer or the small exclamation mark, because between all those pillars that I'm pronouncing today, we see the notion not of the global south and where Ukraine is in there. They're trying to avoid today of using this terminology at all, and to put the global Ukraine as the partner in front of the countries that are developing. By saying this, I will go and bring us to the third pillar, which is very fundamental for both Ukraine and Sub-Saharan Africa, that is peace and security as the fundamental pillar for the development of both regions. Then we have to remember that in some decades ago, Ukraine had formed the political and economical network of support based on our educational and cultural connections. And that's something that I think Ms. Razumna is talking about during one of those pillars in her research. How do we position ourselves in the future between Ukraine and South Africa? When do we take that ground to grow in that partnership that might become strategic? And the formulation of the constant, stable network of political and economic support on the humanitarian grounds, I think this is one of the very important. It's fourth in my list, but it's definitely not last for a Ukrainian strategy in Ukraine. Then I will call another one, which is the Euro integration. And you might be surprised, how do I connect the Euro integration with Sub-Saharan Africa? And it's very easy, because our partners in European Union already established not only their strategy, but very strong presence in Africa through both political, economic, cultural grounds. And Ukraine cannot do the integration to the European Union only putting together our internal reforms together. The key to the Euro integration is to be integrated in the processes that are happening, that are important, that are crucial for the development of the European Union itself. And Africa here is key. If you look at the strategies of EU in Africa, and of course of the key countries of EU, there are those who have their historical background and cooperation, but also the appearance of new actors in Africa is very attractive today. I'm sure His Excellency Alexander Sherba will confirm that we see the Poland, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria as very active players today in Africa, who are trying to also engage and grow their diplomatic presence. there. And there is a last and very important pillar for our strategic or strategy in Africa, which is formulation of synergetic or synergy of the Team Ukraine in Africa, where all the previous pillars of strategy come together and coordinated between all the actors, governmental and non-governmental, who are involved in the development of the partnership of Ukraine and the continent. By saying this, I would like to stress that South Africa in the macro region is one of the most heavyweight and important players. This is the strongest democracy on the continent. Its financial and legal sector is amazingly strong, not only for the continent, but also for the globe. And we see more and more our key partners are using South Africa as a trampoline, if I may say so, for the multiplication of efforts in the regional context. Here, we have to understand that as democracies work, they are taking time to approve certain projects, particularly political projects with other actors who are relatively new for themselves. And that's why our engagement with South Africa sometimes is seen through the lenses of African time or through the clock of African time. So we definitely have to be very patient, but very strategic in what we are trying to achieve, because we understand that the multiplication of our collaboration will go much broader out of South Africa. And we could speak about different platforms that we can use to build up or continue to build up the relation between Ukraine and South Africa. But instead, I would like to point out in the framework of democracy that we have a very strong and very important layer of communication and collaboration that in many other countries of Africa we don't have, which is the civil society. Strong civil society of South Africa, the open media, and I guess that the embassy of Ukraine in South Africa is showing the excellent approach towards how we use this available right now platforms in order to be seen, to be better known, to be better understood. In this regard, the cultural and the different humanitarian projects are very important as well, while we are looking at the mechanisms of involvement of Ukraine in particular cases of cooperation. This is already existing. We really have the established ground where we can be heard and seen. And of course, South Africa is very the country that finds itself in a big challenge today, as rightly Ambassador said, not only in terms of its very challenging and complicated relations with some of the global actors. It faces a huge unemployment among the youth, the energy transformation, and this brings the whole region under that difficulty of analysis and strategizing what will be the next. And South Africa will definitely need to develop and differentiate its approach towards different players and different partners. So diversification of partners, this is probably the task that South Africa will need to face, and this is where Ukrainian term will come. And we always speak to our partners in Africa about our readiness to engage, about their requests, how particularly and in which format, with the assistance of which other partners and actors Ukraine can be helpful for the steady and consistent development of African countries. So we finally, as Ukraine, have the vision. We have it not for the short period. We have it quite global, I think applicable not only to the South Africa, to the Southern Africa, or to Africa at all, but probably the vision towards the countries that are developing. We finally realizing that it's not about Africa as conglomerative appearance, but it's about each particular case study that that exists today with all its diversity, and that is why it is so important to have these opinions, and it's so much appreciated the research that Pani Oksana introduced to us, and I hope we will see more. I want to express gratitude again to Ukrainian Prism for this effort to hear the position, the current position of Ukraine, where we go, and I hope that very soon we will be able to speak about the strategic partnership with the biggest players in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Let me start with the first round of questions, and considering the time, I would propose short question, as short answer as possible. Not always the short answer is possible, I understand. But I already have a few questions that we agreed, and I see the questions in the chat. Others also can write their questions in the chat if they want, or raise their hands. I already see Dr. Haran hand, so that's how we will start. So, Ambassador Sherba, the big question. We haven't put the question mark to the title of this session. Is it functional engagement or strategic ties? Because we probably wanted to be a little bit at the positive side and ask you the question. What you would identify, let's say, as the 3 top priorities to make Ukrainian-South African relations really strategic? You, as an ambassador, what you would put in this list?
Well, strategic relationship is something robust, something exceptional. It's very noble to have this objective before ourselves, but in order to achieve it, we need to establish something basic, like a friendship group in the parliament, like business council, like the habit of people in 2 countries listen to each other, travel to each other, understand each other. These basic things, they are still something that we have to work upon. And I would start with that. So I'm sorry, but I don't have any other answer. But how do Americans call it? Strategy of children steps, small steps. I don't see any other way ahead.
Thank you. So the small steps, but leading to the very practical and functional engagement.
Oh, Americans call it baby steps. Baby
steps.
Sorry. Yeah.
We really would prefer a little bit bigger steps over there, but if we can start with a lot of the small steps, the most important, can we reach the final goal? And on this way, babies usually had some problems with the easy walking. Yep, they are bumping more often than adults. So we have the quite a hard question in the chat already. And as I think that it refers not only to South Africa, but wider to the region. So let me refer it to Ambassador Abravitova. We always speak about the bilateral interest and bilateral difficulties. What are the sensitive topics? Ukraine is trying to come to Africa very often with the decolonization discourse as well. But we understand that in this, there are also sensitive issues for the Africans. And Maria is asking about the latest abstention of Ukraine during the voting at the United Nations General Assembly regarding the so-called anti-slavery resolution. It's wider, we understand. So what is the Ukrainian position? Is it wider context that probably we as an observers didn't notice? And do you think that it can influence our relations with the African countries, such abstention over this resolution?
Thank you for this question. I think this is something that obviously was in the air, has been after this vote in the United Nations. First of all, let's all agree that we are all aware that Ukraine in different internal but also multilateral legal documents and dimensions condemned slavery, including the multiple international law frameworks. And if we look at the particular document that was proposed as a resolution, as a draft resolution by the Ghanaian presidency, Ghanaian president, was something that was connecting the reparations for the slavery, something that happened many centuries ago, which had already in the international law and even in the framework of the United Nations, repercussions for some of the countries that used to be the colonizers. And I'm talking about the long discussion between the Germany and Namibia about the genocide of Herero people. This discussion is not new. What was new in this resolution and what put the split between the African countries and some of the countries that are developing with the rest of the world is the connection that Ghana was making in the underdevelopment of the countries of Africa. That stance of the economies in the relation with that slavery that happened many centuries ago. And this is the key element where most of our partners were not agree, were not consent. And it would establish a very strong and not necessary precedent. And this is my answer, that we have to really look into the details of the resolution. It's not about the title. It is about the intent by some countries to justify their failures, including their own, and I'm not talking particularly about Ghana, but in many cases in Africa, autocracies, corruption, to justify through the general resolution, the problems that countries are facing today. So sometimes it's even more about the internal politics. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We definitely always need, when we are speaking about the multilateral initiatives, to look to the history of the question, because we are taking very often the one voting without the greater context of how this issue been developed within one organization or in general within the international mechanisms. Professor Harany, I see your hand. Feel free to ask your question by voice. Switch on the microphone.
Yes, it's always great to be invited by Hannah Shelest. It's great to see our ambassadors. I will give one information which I think would be helpful, and secondly would be my question. The information is about the project the Democratic Initiatives Foundation is doing in the Global South, and particularly in Africa, and particularly what we are doing in South Africa. We prepared 3 reports together with South African experts. That's what is important, I think, because now we can say, okay, it's not only Ukrainian point of view. You see, South African experts are here, and last week actually there was an event at SAIA with presentation of the report on nuclear safety. I'm not sure it's in here, but anyway, it's on the website, and there are 2 other reports on regional security and on children. One will be translated into French, and one is half translated into Kiswahili, Arabic, and some other languages. So feel free to use it. The question, oh, by the way, they were also presented in Addis Ababa, where Ambassador Ambrabitova participated with adventures. I will not elaborate on that. In adventures on the ground, I mean. Now, the question. The question is perhaps to Ambassador Sherba, who mentioned it, that we are in particularly difficult situation because of what United States are doing right now. Here, actually, I was told by our Latin American experts, but also it may be related to Africa as well. Latin American friends told us that previously we were viewed as American puppet, and now it's not the case. So in the same way, we know that Africans considered Ukraine to be too close to the West, and particularly to the United States, and now it's not the case. And we knew that South Africa, I believe for the first time, supported the resolution where the words pro-Ukrainian resolution, where the words like Russian aggression were mentioned. It's interesting that the US abstained. Okay, South Africa for the first time supported it. Maybe it's not a great step, but, well, baby step or something like that. So there are some, openings here, maybe. I'm not sure. What's your take on that? Thank you.
Thank you. Considering the time, probably I will refer this question to Oksana. Look into the 30+ years of relations. Is it a baby step in terms of the South African voting? Or is it already a certain signal that South Africa can adjust its policy from BRICS to Global South leadership, to something like this, to being much more sensitive to the Ukrainian concerns and the position regarding the Russian-Ukrainian war?
Thank you very much. I want to intervene to other question answered by the 2 ambassadors, and all these questions are interrelated to some extent. So what I see for now as a priority, strategic priority for Ukraine in terms of enforcement of BRICS and positioning of South Africa within BRICS more than neutrality, less neutrality, more pro-Russian, pro-BRICS position. And in terms of what was told by Professor Harang, track 2 diplomacy are more and more important on this stage, I think. Working with experts and with the human rights defenders of the both countries is very important on this track. So for South Africa, opinion makers of South African society is mainly human rights defenders in light of post-apartheid, in light of the apartheid legacy. Human rights defenders' voices are very significant, are very influential in the South African society. That is why all these initiatives like expert diplomacy, track 2 diplomacy, interactions between and advocacy of human rights defenders are important for voting, for public opinion. And we know that the polls show that South African society doesn't support South African government. And we know about the freedom of speech in this country, and it gives us more opportunities. And this question about the voting, the recent voting, the abstention of Ukraine. So when I heard about this, first of all, I checked the voting of the Republic of Ireland. I think in terms of the European Union positioning in this voting, it's very important. First of all, there was a question of crimes hierarchy. So it was, this resolution was about recognizing the hardest crime, slavery as the hardest crime. And it is against and contradicts with the international law, and that is why I think for Ukraine is important to comment what the Ambassador Abravitova mentioned. Our position in Ukraine as a subject on the international stage is important to give us voice every time we can comment some voting or some other important steps. So commenting on this voting would be would give us more benefits, I think. And this is again the question of human rights defenders and the question of track 2 diplomacy. Oksana, great to see you again. Thank you for the report. Okay, thank you. Yeah, did I answer?
Thank you very much. Using this opportunity, I would be, and not seeing the questions in our chat, I would be concluding our event with the certain probably our points. I would not say them the final conclusions, because I think that that was the good to raise the questions rather than to give the full answers. And here, if we would start doing more sexy titles as the yellow press, we would call it the Ukraine, South Africa from baby steps to where we are going. And that would be our big title of today online event. But nevertheless, I think that the baby steps are usually the most crucial. That's where we are creating the agenda for the future. And we definitely see how during the last 10 years, the Ukrainian policy towards South Africa changed significantly. We are seeing in South Africa is seen in Ukraine. There are already a number of the second track diplomacy or the human rights organizations, journalists, and the think tanks visits both to South Africa and to Ukraine. That's dialogue that probably 10 years ago we couldn't even imagine. I remember our conversations before Ambassador Abravitova traveled there, and it was something like, where she's going, why it is, will it be important? Now that's already not a question for the Ukrainian policy and for the experts around. So from those first baby steps, we are in the absolutely different environment, even that this environment is very turbulent. And that's what Ambassador Sherba presented us, that we are working in the quite turbulent times when we need to consider not only the bilateral context and all the traumas inside of the Ukrainian and South African societies and politics, but much wider context that would be influencing these relations. Nevertheless, I really hope that that is just one of a kind event, not only on behalf of the Ukrainian Prism, but plenty of the Ukrainian and South African think tanks that are working with these topics, and that we really will be able in a year or two to speak about more profound strategic ties, if not a full strategic partnership between the countries, because I hope and we know that currently Ukraine is moving from the policy of announcing every second country as a strategic partner advance, not by the result of the events. So we really hope the fulfillment of those projects and ideas that we have between the two countries. So we are inviting you to read the report and several others connected with the African policy of Ukraine that are already available at the Ukrainian Prism. And we hope to see you at other events. I hope that we again return back to the Middle Eastern questions very soon. That's never give us a rest and give new topics. And we also will be glad to present the results of our latest trips to India and Japan, because each of these countries that are within these projects, Global Partnership 2.0, as we call them now, are really giving the new breeze to the formulation of the Ukrainian priorities beyond the Russian-Ukrainian war, that both gave us the hardships, but opened the opportunities for the dialogue with the countries that can be far on distance, but sometimes much closer in terms of the understanding of where Ukraine now. My great appreciation and the great appreciation of the Ukrainian Prism to our wonderful speakers today, Ambassador Sherba, Ambassador Ambrovitova, Mrs. Razumna, and we really hope to see you at the next events of the Ukrainian Prism. Thank you.